Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. Today we've got a really special guest. Bianca and I were talking with Gail Sherman. Gail Sherman's the CEO of Wine Lovers Travel. Welcome to the show, Gail. Welcome to the show, Bianca.
Hi, Drew and Bianca.
Gosh,
Hi,
thank you so
Gail.
much for joining us. So, Gail, I hear you just got back from a fantastic trip. Before we learn more about you, I want to hear more about this trip to Portugal.
Okay, cool. Yes, I just came back a week ago from about 2 weeks there. It was truly my first real time, other than a half a day I spent in Lisbon when I started a cruise trip 10 years ago. And for this trip, it really focused on wine. So I was in Porto, and then I was in the Douro Valley. And it was very interesting because when people think of Portugal, they think of port wine, and obviously they should, because port is where it is. But they also produce a lot of fine wines that people don't think about in Portugal.
Oh,
And so that was really interesting. So the only downside of my trip is that, like the rest of California, it rained every single day I was there.
yeah. Oh, did it?
Yes,
Did
it
it?
does.
So step back. So you also went to the Azores as well, didn't you?
I did. And that was very interesting. You know, I didn't know too much about the Azores, but now I do. First of all, it's part of Portugal.
Mhm.
It's overseen by the Portuguese government, although I was told they have their own president. But at the end of the day, the president of Portugal will oversee or overrule what goes on in the Azores. But it's an archipelago, a volcanic archipelago. It's about 1,000 miles off the coast of Portugal, sort of right in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah. Were you on Pico Island? I know there's a lot of wine going there.
I was not, and I had wine from Pico. We were only on the main island, which is San Miguel.
Okay.
And I was only there for about 3 days. And mostly when I was there, the indigenous, well, I don't even know if they're indigenous, but the crops that they grow there now are tea and baby pineapples.
Oh, wow.
And it's interesting.
But I don't think I've seen a baby pineapple.
Pardon?
I don't think I've seen a baby pineapple.
It's about so big.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's very cute, and they're very sweet. You have to taste them. I don't know that this is the exact time of year, so I believe during the summertime they're really sweet, and they farm them in greenhouses because the climate is not really suited for pineapple production. So it's very interesting. And then they grow a lot of tea there, which I didn't know either.
So now stepping back for our listeners, you're in charge of Wine Lovers Travel. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Wine Lovers Travel is my passion project. I have always loved travel ever since I was a kid, and I've gotten into wine for most of my adulthood. And after spending a number of years working in sales, selling technology and outsourcing solutions, I finally decided that life was short and I needed to focus on what was important to me. So I got some experience in travel starting in 2017, working for another company that sold cruises that were hosted by wineries.
Oh, all the winery tours that we see go up and down the Rhine and the Rhone. And
Yes, so I sold those to wine wineries, and then I decided that I wanted to break out on my own. In 2019, not the most auspicious time, because I was shortly cut off at the knees by COVID. But, I'm here. I survived it. So what I do is I decided early on that a lot of people don't like cruises, and that was a real impediment. And so I decided that while I will sell a cruise to be hosted by a winery, I'm focusing more on land trips because they're more immersive and they're more, you really can get into the culture and you can really spend time versus, being on a cruise and having 3 hours to go visit a winery.
Yeah, for sure. So these land trips that you set up, are they with wineries, or do you do you have a local partner with a local winery and go with the guests like these river cruises? Or tell us how they're set up.
And they're set up pretty much like that, where I will and I partner with primarily boutique artisanal kinds of wineries, not so much the big guys that you could find in, Costco and your local supermarkets. So I deal with the smaller production wineries that sell primarily direct to consumers. So it really behooves them to grow that business as much as possible. One of the ways they do that, of course, is with their wine clubs. And they're always trying to grow their wine club, mostly always trying to grow their wine club. There are a few that are at capacity, but
no, then they're trying to grow their wait list so they can brag about how long their wait list is.
Like our friends at Saxo, I'm on the wait list for years already, and I'm not sure if I ever get to the front of the line that I'm going to want to spend that kind of money. But that's another conversation. But in any case, so I partner with these wineries and explain to them that this is another marketing event for them, and I take care of everything from all the operations, the booking, the payments, everything. Their responsibility is to promote these trips to their customers in their tasting room, at their events, and digitally. And I even provide all the materials for them. I produce, all the collateral and a page on my website. I give them everything they need, and they just need to get out the word, and then I do these trips. And I'm starting my 2023 trips in May. Actually.
Oh, yeah.
First one is to the road.
When you're doing this, are you coming up with the whole plan of where all they're going to be going, where they're going to be staying, or just the wineries come to you with suggestions of where they'd like to go, what they'd like to do?
Well, it's a good question. And what I do is I start off by having a conversation with them to find out what's important to them. And yes, where they would like to go. And sometimes it's based upon the type of wine that they produce. And for example, I do a lot with wineries in Paso Robles, which produce a lot of Rhone varietals. And so it seems obvious that they would want to go to the Rhone, but not always. And of course, they produce a lot of Cab, and maybe they want to go to Bordeaux, or maybe they want to go to Australia for that matter. So first I need to have this deep dive with the winery owner or winemaker, which sometimes the same person, sometimes two separate people. And from there, I design the trip. And in order to do this, I have partners in the various countries where I do these trips. And I develop these personal relationships with people in places like France and Spain and Italy and Croatia and Slovenia, which is an up and coming market for me. And so I put together the program. If the winery has some special requests or they have personal relationships with anywhere where we're going, then I would certainly include those. But that's not their responsibility. I put together the trip and I present the itinerary to them, and we talk about what it would cost and all of that. And then once we're in agreement, then we start promoting. And the winery, it varies. A couple of things. One is that I want to keep the group size small because I want to keep them intimate and I want to keep them authentic. And I don't want to, come to the various places we're visiting with enormous tour buses. And so we keep the group small.
What's the ideal group size that you've found?
What's the average?
I've been saying between 10 and 20. I'm thinking between 10 and 16 is probably really the sweet spot and I can go, and in fact, my group to the road, it will be 20. It was sold out. That was my max, and we sold out, and I'm thrilled about that. But you don't want people to feel like they're in a crowd. And we never go to places that are the commercial places that, you do see all the tour buses lined up. These are all based upon personal relationships and getting people behind the doors to places they wouldn't be able to find otherwise.
Yeah, give us an example. Like talk to us about maybe this road trip coming up, some of the special prizes or special events that the consumers can see.
Sure. So on the wine side, for example, one of the famous wineries there is Regal. And yes, you can find Wigal a lot of places in the United States, but I have a son who is actually an expat American who lives in France, and I've been working extensively with him, and he has personal relationships with the people over there. So we're getting a special tasting that is not available to the general public. And they're even if we're lucky, and I think we will be, get to taste their Lala, which is their ultimate premier wine.
Oh yeah.
So that's an example. Another example is, and this is not a wine thing, but this is, we specialize in a lot of wineries, but we also have to do some culture and things like
Oh
that.
yeah.
So,
It's all
so
intertwined.
you could only drink so much wine too. The first trip I did, I'll have to say, was last year, and we were in Croatia, and we were going to 4 or 5 wineries a day, and people were saying, "Enough! I can't drink anymore." So I mean, you learn, and so we max out at 3 wineries a day. But
Nice.
anyhow, so we do other things, and one of the really cool places in the south of France is called the Pont du Gard. Are you familiar with that at all?
I've not been there. No.
I haven't been there, but I've heard of it.
So the Pont du Gard is a Roman aqueduct, not too far from Nîmes in Provence, and it was built 2,000 years ago for the purpose of bringing water to Nîmes. And it's when you go there, and I was there for the first time last summer, and I've been to the south of France many, many times, and it's sort of like going to Paris and never seen the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
I've been to the south of France many times, and it took till last year till I saw it, and it's pretty magnificent. It's a 3-level aqueduct that goes up, I don't know how many hundreds of feet. And if you make special arrangements, you could go onto the very top level, which I did not get to do last year, and you can see how the water actually flowed through the aqueduct and down into Nîmes. And I believe we're going to do a wine tasting or have a little snack, not really a meal, but some food wine up there also. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's
incredible. Now on this upcoming road trip, are you partnering with a winery?
I am. One of my favorites, I don't want, but they are a favorite, and I've had a long-time relationship with them. It's called Caliza. And they are Cacerolas, the winemakers, Carl Boker, who I've gotten to know very well over the last several years. And I really think Carl's a genius when it comes to winemaking. And he has never done a trip like this before. I've been talking about this with him for years, and we were talking about a river cruise and all this, and COVID, blah, blah. And so finally he said, yeah, let's do it. And we sold out because he's not a huge winemaker. He's under 5,000 cases a year, but what he produces is really, to my mind, it's magic.
Is he a Rhone inspired producer? Like, does he?
He is. He does a lot of Rhone. Yeah, I think he does Zinfandel, which is not Rhone. And he doesn't do, yeah, so I guess he is pretty much Rhone. And he also, I believe he does Tempranillo also, which is Rioja, but no Bordeaux particularly.
On your trip where you there's no wine tasting involved, it's maybe a free for all for guests to do whatever they would like because they're going to these areas, or a beach day, or anything, or is it wine tasting every single day?
No, there's actually one day in particular where there's no wine tasting because it's a Sunday, and Sundays once in a great while, if you pull on a string, you can get a winery to open for you, but generally not. So we are going to, the trip is actually started in Lyon, which is a couple hours south of Paris, and then we're going to go south to Avignon, which is an hour or so out of Marseille, which is on the coast. And on Sunday, we're going to go to a place called Ile-sur-la-Sorgue, which is an adorable town where they are known for their antique market. And it's a big deal, and we're going to go there and spend part of the day there. And then there's some other towns nearby that are very charming. One is called Roussillon, and it has to do Roussillon. The word red or rouge comes from there, and it has to do with the red cliffs that are surrounding the area. So that day, not that people won't be able to find a glass of wine, but it is not a winery day.
That's fascinating. So the wineries out there are not open on Sundays.
They're not, and often not on Saturdays either. But I have.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
amazing. I suppose some of the more commercial wineries are open. on the weekends, but those are winery visit.
Yeah. Now, how important is as you're laying out the itinerary, how important is it for like downtime for your people? And how do you balance that kind of free time with group time and organized itinerary?
That is always a challenge, because there is so much to see and do and drink that, I could fill them up, all their waking hours, but people do want the free time. And so normally what we do is we have, we don't start at the crack of dawn, and also who wants to drink wine at the crack of dawn. So, they have their breakfast in the hotel. We'll start somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock, and we'll start. And the usual plan is you do a winery in the morning, and then you do lunch in a really nice restaurant, a paired lunch, and then maybe you do something else, or you go to another winery, and then you return to town at the end of the day, and then you're on your own. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think, I'm hardly ever, maybe never do 2 planned meals a day, mm-hmm. because it's just, first of all, it's too much food. If you're having this multi-course lunch with wine pairings, you may not even want to eat dinner. You might just want a little, snack. And so we do give people time. And the other thing too, because one of people's favorite activities wherever they go, and I'll include myself in this, is shopping. Mm-hmm. And stores in Europe are usually open at least till 7 o'clock and sometimes later. So if we get them back by, 5, they have some free time, and then they go to dinner on their own. We certainly can recommend places, but free time is really important. And when, again, this first trip I did last year to Croatia, I didn't give the people enough free time, and they wanted it. And so there were a couple times where some of the people just begged off, and they said, this hotel is wonderful. A couple of them had spas. We just want to do the spa, so we're going to do our own thing.
Well, that's good. So I want to talk for a second about, you started your company right before the pandemic.
Yes.
A travel company. And then there was the pandemic and the whole world was shut down. And now we've come out of it. Talk to me about what it's like traveling now in 2023, now that the world's opened back up. What do you see that's the same, that's different? How do people navigate?
It's evolving. And since I would say the world started opening in the early part of 2022, mm-hmm. and that was a time where there were still a lot of requirements for vaccines and COVID testing. And until sometime middle of late 2022, you had to get a COVID test before you could re-enter the United States. And that was always very scary, because even if you were sure you didn't have COVID, until you got that negative test result, you weren't sure if you were going to come home or not. So that was a challenge.
I had friends trapped in Europe last year in the summer of 2022, just a few months ago. Yeah. And coming in now, we're in April of 2023. What's it like traveling to Europe now from the US?
It's pretty much back to normal. There's a lot of people traveling. There's almost, I'm thinking, because just being in Portugal, I don't think there were any mask requirements. Now, I did choose to wear a mask on the flights because I just thought that was a smart thing to do, but I was in the minority for sure. But it's pretty much back to normal. And I'm finding too that within Europe in the hospitality field, people are so happy to have tourists back. They just are, and so they're very gracious and hospitable, and that's really nice.
Well, that's so. And then the exchange rate's really good right now too.
It is, although it's going up a little bit.
Is it?
A few months ago, the dollar and the euro were almost at par. And in fact, there were a few days where the dollar was actually stronger than the euro. It's now, I haven't looked the last couple of weeks, but it's about $1.10 to the euro. So it's still pretty equivalent. And in certain countries, like Portugal, as an example, is very inexpensive. So even though the euro has gained, it's still very inexpensive there. And the cost of wine is so inexpensive. Yeah. Same in Spain, same in the Balkans.
You've got a cider trip coming up in Spain. Talk to me about that.
I do. That one is being sponsored by a cider company in Santa Barbara, and so I'm trying to branch out a little bit.
Which cider company?
It's called Santa Barbara Cider Company.
Santa Barbara Cider Company. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a big cider fan. I have not had theirs.
And you know, the good thing about cider is that it's more appealing, I think, to younger demographics than wine. You know, there are younger people who, I would say the cutoff is sort of age 50, and people under 50 are not as big into wine as they are into cocktails and ciders and the alcoholic seltzers and that kind of thing. And so cider is there, and Spain is known for its cider. So we're going to be doing a trip from sort of I'm thinking about the map of Spain, sort of north central Spain, all the way into San Sebastian and the Basque Country.
Oh, wow.
We're even going to slip over into France, into the Basque side of France to go to some cider producers. So that would be really exciting and different.
Is airfare included in your?
No, it is. Well, the international airfare is not included. If there are flights involved within the trip, which are domestic, then yes, they're included. For example, I have a trip coming up right after the Rhone with a winery called Harmony Cellars, and they are going to Spain. And then there is an optional extension to Portugal. So the flight between Malaga, Spain, and Porto is included in the price of the trip.
I think that makes sense, because a lot of people, if they're making the trip all the way to Europe, they might want to bracket a few days before or a few days after your portion. So they just have to get to point A in whatever country you're starting at by a certain date.
Yeah, and they usually do. And if somebody needs me to help them with air, I have a air partner that I work with who does all the air bookings, so I can provide full service. And if they want extra time in the hotels, I can help with that. I have one client who is going on another trip to Bosnia and Croatia with Omarosa Winery, which is out of they're in Solvang. And
I know them well. My aunt was a tasting manager, Arlene Cheatham, for many years. She's passed now, but we Omarosa and Sanford before that were very close to us.
Yes, and Richard Sanford still owns the land that it's produced on. So you know the story about Sanford and how he sold everything, including his name. So he couldn't even use his name. And,
he got a raw deal.
Apparently so. I've met him. He's a very nice man, and he lives on the property. And we did an event a few months ago, and he was there. But I have a couple that's going on that trip, and at the conclusion of that trip, they want to do self-drive up to Italy, and I think they're meeting some friends at Italy. And so I was able to help them to map out the whole program and book their hotels and everything. And that's through the relationship I have with my partner in Croatia.
Oh, that's fantastic. So the Omarosa trip's going to Croatia?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be great.
Yeah, and Croatia. Have you been there, either of you?
I have not.
Croatia is just beautiful. And what people don't know about Croatia is it's actually the birthplace of Zinfandel. And you were asking earlier about Kaliza and their Rhone varietals, and I said they produce Zinfandel, which they do, but it's people don't know that, but Zinfandel got its start there, and it wasn't even discovered, I think, until the 1980s, when there was a professor up at UC Davis who realized that the grapes that are what we call Zinfandel are the same grapes that they make in Croatia. They've been going back for thousands of years. And the trajectory was that the wine went from Croatia to Italy, where it became known as Primitivo, and then came to the U.S. And you'll notice sometimes American wineries still call it Primitivo, but it's all the same one.
Yeah, I actually worked with a girl that was from Croatia, and she spoke a lot about Zin, because Zin had always been one of my favorite varietals. And then she shared the whole story about it with Croatia and how it got started, and pretty fascinating. But I think I'd have a hard time going to Croatia, because I'm pretty certain there's a lot of islands and beachy places in Croatia, and I'd want to be there. And
Well, I have a plan for you because one of my upcoming trips that's not even on the website yet because it's still finalizing development, but we're going to be doing a yacht trip to Croatia in September and
fun.
going to all the islands. It's not necessarily going to be a wine trip. In fact, I will probably be the one hosting it versus a winery, but it should be pretty awesome. So watch my website.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So I want to step back to kind of the business of Wine
Yeah.
Lovers Travel, and what separates you from some of these other travel companies, other than that you're on land and they're on a river?
Well, I think what separates me is I have a very strong business background because I didn't start out in travel.
Mhm.
So I look at this as a business venture with my clients. They're the wineries are my business partners.
Mhm.
I'm trying to help them to expand their DTC business
Yeah.
and through travel because travel bonds people and you watch Shark Tank like I do. They about the customer acquisition costs, which is very high. So if you're constantly having to acquire clients, it could be very expensive. But if you're able to retain them by giving them this kind of travel activity,
Mhm.
it can really help to grow your business. And you're building a reputation. It's not just a winery, but sort of an experience. And people
Yeah.
want experiences.
Yeah. So instead of like the travel company saying, "Hey, help me sell this river cruise," because the benefits to you, you come in more of a strategic partner with the wineries and help them
Absolutely, yeah.
devise a way to really add value to their club and add value to their members.
That's very true. And I think that does set me apart. And then the other thing too is the type of trip that I do. I have to say, if I wanted to do river cruises, my life would be so much easier
Mhm.
because I don't have to do anything. You have no control over the itinerary of the river cruises. I have great relationships with several of them. And the best I can do is I could add perhaps a shore excursion or a pre-trip or a post-trip. But basically, I'm selling a commodity just like
Mhm.
anybody else. But with my trips, they are totally unique. And the other value proposition I provide is that no two trips are the same. So I have and I will be doing other trips to the Rhone, for example.
Mhm.
They will never be identical to what we're doing with Kalisa. They might be similar. It's hard not to be similar,
Sure,
but
sure.
we'll have different wineries. I mean, they will be different.
They fit the
Yeah.
clientele of the winery and they match the winery's goals. Now, talk to me
Yeah.
about, so we know about the benefits, but how your advice to wineries to kind of utilizing these trips for their clients?
In terms of it's building the relationships. It's making the customers feel more aligned with the winery, that they don't just see that as a wine, but it's a whole relationship that they're having with the winery and the people that work there.
Mhm.
And I think that really goes a long way. And it's small, obviously. If I'm doing groups of 10 to 20 people, I'm not bringing thousands of new members to the wine club, although most of them wouldn't have the capacity for that anyhow. But what I'm doing is I'm helping them to build a whole new way to attract and retain club members. And
Nurture and retain is two of the biggest components of running a wine club. You get them in, but
Yes.
if they leave in 3 months, it doesn't really do you any good. So
No.
it's keeping them as raving fans who then spread the word. So so do all the wineries attend, or is there a member of the winery on the trip too?
Oh yes, absolutely. That's critical. Because they are the host. I may or may not escort. I've used the word escort because in addition to the winery representative, I always have what's called a tour manager on these trips. And
Okay.
the tour manager is a local person who will be with the group throughout. They are not the guide. I mean, they might have some guiding, and they certainly know their country, but we would have guides or somms or restaurant owners or wherever we're visiting. Those would be the guides. But the tour manager is the logistics person to make sure everything runs smoothly. People get checked into their hotels. The transportation comes on time, that kind of thing.
So Gail, on the as you're going, as someone attends this event, do the winery, and especially for the wineries, I can see some of them might be intimidated to be spending 7 days with a select group of their clients. How involved are the wineries with like conducting the dinners or doing special tastings?
They are generally they're almost like one of the guests.
Mhm.
They are not responsible. What they are responsible for is attending everything that's on the itinerary.
They
So
can't
if
have a
they're
spa day.
yeah, pardon? Yeah.
They can't have a spa day.
No, they cannot have a spa day. But that said, when they're off the clock, so to speak, at breakfast,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, when we have free time, they're free to do whatever they want. There is a challenge that some people will try to sort of take over and try to just sidle up with the winery owner and try to be with them all the time. And so I tell them, the winery owners, that it's your vacation too, and while you want to be kind and gentle with the people that helped you to get to where you are, this is your vacation too. So don't feel like you're obligated to spend time with them when you need your own free time.
Sure, sure. So as we're kind of wrapping down this show, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to we can discuss?
Um, Well, one thing we went really briefly over what happened during COVID, and I just want to say, because I think this is a differentiator for me, is that I didn't just sit and wait for travel to come back. What I did was pivot, as many people did, and I decided that I would organize virtual wine tastings for
Oh,
wineries. I could keep in front of them so that they knew I was there. I wasn't going away. And until they could host trips again, I would help them with virtual tastings. And the way I did it was different because a lot of people were doing virtual tastings. And the first ones were the wineries would get on Zoom and they would hold up some bottles of their wine and they would say, I'm drinking this wine and it's got floral notes with a little bit of vanilla and tobacco or what have you. And it was really boring to watch that.
uh-huh.
You got to taste the wine. And so what I did was I worked with a number of wineries, including the ones that I'm traveling with now, and arranged for them to rebottle their wine into tasting flights, either 2 or 4 ounce tasting flights, very similar experience to what you would have in the tasting room. It was really labor intensive for them because the little bottles are bottled very differently for uncorking the wine and, making sure the oxidation. And so we had a whole logistics with shipping and to make sure the wine was shipped out and arrived promptly. And then the other change was that I brought them the people. I was able to network with all kinds of organizations, ranging from groups of people who like wine, lawyers, accountants, financial planners, real estate people. I had a lot of people. I did all told about 40 different tastings. I had hundreds of people with tastings. And I also got some corporate clients. I had Amazon did a tasting with me, T-Mobile, Morgan Stanley. And some nonprofits like my alma mater, UCLA. So that's how
They're playing today in the college game, and they're playing my alma mater, Gonzaga. Today is March Madness.
Okay. Well, UCLA generally has been a pretty good basketball powerhouse.
Yeah, they're in the Sweet 16, playing later today. Hopefully Gonzaga will win, but for your sake, I'm rooting for UCLA too.
Isn't Arizona State still in there?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I only follow Gonzaga.
My son went there, so that would be my second choice, Arizona.
Very good. So these virtual tastings, are you still doing them now? Because I see the value with corporate bringing disparate corporate teams together.
They are, but I am not. Quite honestly, it was more of a PR effort than anything else. I mean, I didn't make any money on these, and neither did the wineries. It was very labor intensive and a sort of a logistical challenge, but we made it happen. And the whole idea was that not only did I keep up the relationships with the wineries, but every time they did a tasting, I gave them all the contact information. So they acquired people for their mailing list. I acquired new people for my mailing list. it was a win-win. But I'd have to have a whole staff person to do that. It's like, I'm glad that's over.
But it was really a good way to build your network during that time, starting off. And I mean, I do see the people that came out of the pandemic that kind of just plowed right through it and didn't give up or didn't hide in a hole for 2 years, came out even stronger. And it sounds like that was the case with you.
I certainly hope so. I think so. There were a lot of travel companies that went under. They just, because they just didn't have the creativity or the confidence or whatever. But gee, I had just started this business, and it was, as I said, it was my passion project. I was not going to let it fail, and I just plowed right through. Yeah, and I'm real proud of myself. And then the other thing too, I'll say, and I don't know that this is as meaningful for your people, but it was important to me when I first started in travel. One of the ways to do this is to work under the umbrella of an existing travel agency and be an independent contractor, but hosted by another agency under their licensing and all of that. And that was fine. And that helped me to build a lot of relationships with my travel vendors. However, I realized that that wasn't a long-term solution. So as of February, I am 100% independent. So I actually fully own Wine Lovers Travel. I do not have a host anymore.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm very proud of that.
That's
Congratulations.
Thank you.
One question. So what advice do you have for wineries who are considering booking one of these travel experiences for their club members?
I would say do it. If you have the opportunity, give it a chance. There's really no downside to it. And the upside is that first of all, you're going to get to travel. And number two, you're going to have this amazing experience to offer your club members and other people who visit your winery. It's going to help set you apart from other wineries. And I used the word earlier, and I'll use it again. It's an experience, and people really are looking for experiences. They don't just want to go taste wine, or they want something that's more holistic, and they also want hidden gems. They want to feel like they're gaining access to something that they couldn't do otherwise. And this is what I provide the winery, and this is what they can offer their customers, and it's just really special. And one of the trips I'm doing this year, the trip to Spain with Harmony Cellars, they are a repeat. They did my trip to Croatia last year, so we were so pleased that they came back for a second trip. And I'm hoping to be able to build that way too. And then also, I do want to expand the people who host my trips. So I'm starting, like the cider trip, for example. I have another trip that's coming up. It's on my website. It's to Burgundy and Champagne, and it's being hosted by a wine educator. I will have trips that are being hosted by chefs or sommeliers. So people who are prominent in the food and wine industry, who have a following, who want to help grow their business, I can help them with travel.
Oh, very good. Well, Gail, where can people find more about you and Wine Lovers Travel?
Well, they can start at my website, which is wineloverstravel.com. They can also go to my Facebook page, Wine Lovers Travel. I do have a private group, which I'm happy to let anybody join, and it's called Wine Lovers Who Love to Travel. It's a Facebook group. And you can always email me at Gail, Gail at wineloverstravel.com. Gail at wineloverstravel.com.
Fantastic. Well, Gail, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Drugs. I'm very excited about this opportunity. And Bianca, I thank you for all the pre-work that you did and getting acquainted with both of you. And hopefully we'll get to meet in person at some point and consider coming on one of my trips.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always looking for hosts or people who can introduce me to hosts. So seriously, if that's something that is of interest to you, we should have an offline conversation.
Absolutely. Well, Gail, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.